Okay, so welcome to today's edition of DYK, or Did You Know? You might want to know a few things because you might want to be happy about this show because this show is about boats and ships. Now we will start with our ship introduction. Our introduction features explanatory things and things that you might scientists would know this. So don't be surprised if you like what you hear. Okay, so let's hand it over to my dashing assistant co-host.
You know what? The dashing? Nice. Can we keep that in for future shows, the dashing part?
Okay.
Because that was awesome. I feel really ready to go. Well, today's episode is about ships and boats and anything that floats on the water that we feel like talking about. First of all, I want to talk a little bit about some of the science behind floating. So this is something that I actually didn't know about, but I had to look up today. So do you know what displacement is, Carter? Displacement?
Yes.
Oh.
Displacement is the surface area and weight of a buoyant object on the water.
That's pretty good, yeah. So if you had a big container and it was full to the absolute tippy top with water, and then you put something in it and floated it in, it would push some of the water over the sides, right?
That's called displacement.
That water is what's displaced by what you've put in the water, by what you've put in there. Now, if you could weigh that water and see how much it weighed, that's how much weight you can put in the boat and still float. In other words,
with more weight, there's more displacement.
Yeah, if it displaces a certain weight of water, then that's the weight that that causes upward force from the water itself, and that counteracts gravity. So if your boat or ship weighs less than the amount of water you've displaced, it floats. If it weighs more than the amount of water you've displaced, then it sinks. So when you talk about ships a lot, they talk about what's its displacement. And that means how much weight it could carry without sinking. Doesn't mean that that's how much it necessarily weighs. It just means that's how much you can put in the boat and how much the whole thing can weigh before it sinks.
Well, I wish we could experiment with that.
I wish we could do an experiment too.
Yeah.
Now I'm going to read this in a little more scientific way. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. An object that sinks displaces an amount of fluid equal to that object's volume. Thus, buoyancy is expressed through Archimedes' principle. Did you know who Archimedes was? Can I tell you who Archimedes was?
He was a famous scientist?
He was a famous scientist who lived on the island of Syracuse, but he was basically Greek. The Greek people colonized the island of Syracuse a long time ago, thousands of years ago. And he not only came up with these brilliant ideas, but he was also an amazing inventor. He invented a lot of weapons and war machines and came up with a lot of brilliant ideas. And this was Archimedes' principle. So, thus, buoyancy is expressed through Archimedes' principle, which states that the weight of the object is reduced by its volume multiplied by the density of the fluid. If the weight of the object is less than the displaced quantity, the object floats. If it's more, it sinks. The amount of fluid displaced is directly related via Archimedes' principle to its weight. So that's what displacement and buoyancy is all about. For example, the aircraft carrier USS Theodore Roosevelt has a displacement of 97,000 tons.
That's a lot.
That's a lot of tons. So if it weighs less than 97,000 tons, it floats. If it weighs more than that, blub, blub, blub. Did you know that 71% of the world is covered with water?
Some people say it's 73%, but where we got this is 70.
Yeah,
so,
but it's a lot. Most of the world is covered by water. So ships, that's how you get around most of the world,
yeah,
right?
it's 3/4.
3/4 of the world. So, Carter, I have another question about ships. Have you ever been on a ship?
Oh, yes, I've actually been on many ships. I've been on cruises to Liberty Island. One cruise so far. I've been on, let me think.
We've been on boats that went around harbors and stuff like that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Water taxis and things like that.
Yes, water taxis, one in New York.
Did you like it?
Yes, I did.
It's fun, right? Why is being on a ship better than being in a car or something?
Oh, and one in Baltimore.
In Baltimore, too, yeah. What would you say is, before we get into the specifics, what would you like more about being on a boat on the water than like being in a car on a road?
It's much safer. You can't. It's very hard to crash.
It's hard to crash.
Yes, it's hard to crash. It wouldn't be hard to crash if, well, you were intending on it. but it's very hard, and
I like being outside.
yeah,
I like the breeze, sea spray, and
I'm a little under the weather.
that's all right. It's all right. Cough as much as you need to cough. Sometimes you just gotta cough. So let's talk about our first type of ship.
Okay, an ocean liner.
Carter, what's an ocean liner?
An ocean liner
Yeah.
is a ship designed to transport people from one seaport to another along regular-looking long-distance maritime routes according to a schedule. Excuse me.
Yes.
Liners may also carry cargo or mail, and may sometimes be used for other purposes,
So can I tell you a little story about liners, where the name liner comes from?
like airliner.
Well, that comes from ocean liners, and the ocean liners are called ocean liners because a long time ago, a boat would sit in a harbor until it was full. In other words, until it was full of cargo and had enough people, and then it would leave and go to its next destination. But people decided that what if there was a regular schedule so that you always knew that the ship was going to leave at a certain time and arrive at a certain time? That would be better, right?
It would.
So even if the boat wasn't full, it would still leave on schedule. And they would go back and forth between those two cities, like drawing a line from one city to the other, connecting those two cities. And that's why they were called liners, because they went on a schedule from one place to another, like going back and forth on a line. And that's how you get the name ocean liner. Pretty cool, right? And an airliner, they just took that from ocean liners because it came afterwards. Please continue.
Okay.
Did I bore you? You looked a little bored.
I wasn't bored. Sorry. I forget a lot of things, so I just.
Don't forget it. Don't worry about it. Go ahead and read the next one.
Oh, I forgot that.
Go ahead, read the next one.
But I didn't forget this.
No.
In 1847, the SS Great Britain became the first iron-hulled screw-driven ship to cross the Atlantic.
What's a screw-driven ship?
A screw-driven ship is a ship driven by a screw or a shaft.
Propeller, yeah. As opposed to, what did they use before that? Before they had propellers?
Sails.
Sails. They also had side wheelers.
Oh, yes, paddle wheels.
Yeah, they didn't work very well.
I don't know if I've been on a paddle wheel before.
You haven't been on a paddle wheeler. They're very inefficient. It's kind of like instead of having a propeller pushing you along in the water. Yeah, it's kind of like these wheels that kind of slap the water, and it just kind of makes the water mad. You don't really go very fast. Oh, do you want to read the next one? That's kind of a cool fact that you found about a possible ocean liner that's being built.
Titanic 2.
No, wait a minute. Titanic 1 didn't turn out so well. Are you sure you would want to get on something called Titanic 2?
The first Titanic, it didn't work out so well because the science was very poor. It was like it was covered in rivets. And it didn't have very good systems. It had these tanks that didn't reach up all the way to the top of the ship, so it didn't stop it from sinking. And
you think Titanic 2 is going to have better systems than that?
Yeah, it looks a lot like the first Titanic, but it's better.
So tell me about the Titanic 2.
Titanic 2 is a proposed ocean liner to be built as a replica of the Olympic-class RMS Titanic, the first one. Billionaire Clive Palmer, in April 2012, as the flagship of a proposed cruise company, Blue Star Line. Remember the Red Star Line, the White Star Line. Yeah.
The
White Star Line was the regular Titanic, but Titanic 2 is going to be on the Blue Star Line.
Well, that means it won't sink then, since they changed the color of the star.
No, there's still a White Star Line.
Oh, all right. Please continue.
And that doesn't mean it won't sink.
Okay.
But don't be worried.
But you know, with global warming, there won't be any icebergs, right?
Well, that's a bad thing. Don't laugh at that.
I'm not laughing at that. I'm laughing at I don't know what I'm laughing at. So go ahead and keep continuing.
You're
please.
laughing because you're laughing.
Does billionaire Clive Palmer, doesn't that sound like a comic book character?
It's not a comic book.
Billionaire Clive Palmer.
He's an Australian person. That's why the unusual name. His name isn't actually so unusual in Australia. Clive is actually a pretty good name to have.
But if he was a superhero, billionaire Clive Palmer what would his superhero name be like? The Aussie or something?
I don't want to make fun of him.
Ozman? Okay, I'm sorry.
He doesn't go to Oz either.
He doesn't? Okay, cool. Please continue.
The intended launch date was originally set in 2016, next year. Excuse me. With the ship sailing from Southampton to New York within the same year, however, there is increasing uncertainty over the future of the project, with latest claims placing the launch in 2018.
Yeah.
But still, it'll be in our lifetime.
So, will you be sailing on the RMS Titanic too?
I don't know.
We could play shuffleboard together. Maybe we could do a Did You Know from the deck of the Titanic too. Wouldn't that be
I'll
cool?
say, remember our ships episode? Now this is Titanic 2. This is what we were talking about. There's nothing really back here. This is just, I'm just pretending.
I like that. Okay, read the last fact because we got to move on to the next one.
Britannic, sister ship to Olympic and the famous Titanic. RMS Titanic 1, not 2. Never served on the liner trade for which she was built. Instead, she entered war service as a hospital ship, and soon as she was completed and lasted a year before being sunk by a mine.
So wait, she was sunk by a coal mine?
Not by a sea mine, those explosives under the water that if you bump, they blow up.
Oh, because being sunk by a coal mine would be kind of embarrassing. It means you missed your port by quite a lot.
Aircraft carriers. Okay.
Aircraft carriers. Can you
Now-
show me an aircraft carrier, please? I don't
Okay,
know
this
what
is
you're
an
talking
aircraft carrier view from the sky.
about. Yeah. So I need to help you with this, right?
Oh, this is oh, that was so heavy.
It's really heavy.
Oh, that
It's a huge
was
model. So show me some of the features of the aircraft. What is an aircraft carrier? What makes it special?
well. Excuse me again. Really under the weather. Well, what makes an aircraft carrier special is its flight deck. Planes can launch off of it with the help of a steam-powered catapult that fires them forward off the deck and into the air.
So it's like an airport that floats around at sea.
Yeah.
That's really cool. And so it's like it's like being able to take an air base and move it wherever you want as long as there's an ocean. And since there's oceans almost everywhere.
Oh, and there's long-range fighters on there too.
Exactly. So can I give you a little fact about one aircraft carrier, the USS Theodore Roosevelt? It can go 34.5 miles per hour, at least, probably more. 34 miles per hour. That's a big hunk of metal.
And it said up because they didn't want it to know it.
The exact thing. And the crew, the ship's company.
It's 36 by 0.5.
It might be classified that you just gave out there. The ship's company is 3,200 people. That's the people who run the ship. And then the air wing, just the people who run the planes, is another 2,480 people. So that's over 5,000 people on board an aircraft carrier.
Then it needs so many things. Let's bring out the other model. Oh.
That's so heavy, though. All right,
No,
get that
the
other
other
one.
model.
Yeah, no, get the other model. That's no big deal. You can get that. You don't need my help for that. So,
Don't pay any attention to this, and don't be shocked at how large it is, because we're not really. We're taking the.
so this
crane
is
off.
another one here. Another example of an aircraft carrier.
Where's the
Now,
planes?
Unlike most working nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, this one has a giant red button in the front.
Don't ignore that. It's this is actually a toy. It's not.
I'm told that I don't think I'm giving away any classified information by saying that the USS Theodore Roosevelt does not have a giant red squishy button on the front.
It's. There were supposed to be buoys here that I was supposed to launch, but well, I didn't really.
So it has like an elevator for bringing ships up.
I mean planes. You mean
Planes
planes.
up, yes, planes up. So and a lot of carriers are nuclear powered, right? So they don't need fuel.
Yes, they don't need fuel.
Does that mean they never need to,
Well,
have supplies?
They do need to have supplies. They're often nuclear powered, but still need supplies: jet fuel, food, etc.
So even though it's nuclear powered and doesn't need supplies to make it go through the water,
It doesn't need diesel.
it still needs jet fuel for the planes and food for the sailors and spare parts and all that stuff.
Yes,
right?
astronaut. I know, I'm crazy.
Yeah. Well, maybe he just, maybe there's just recovering a spaceship returning from orbit or.
But the planes can't go up there. The propulsion is supposed to go through air, not space, because space is basically nothing.
Can I take this little tiny thing back down? Because we got to move on to the
Tiny
next
thing?
kind of plane.
You mean ship?
Boats, ships. I don't even know what I'm talking about. Thank you for that. All right, what's the next kind of boat or ship that we're going to talk about?
Sailboat.
Okay.
Sailboats.
What's a sailboat? Is it a boat that's for sale? Because I might be looking to buy one.
A sailboat or sailing boat
Like the
is
way you handled that joke. Just ignored it. That's the best way to go. Keep going.
I'm trying to do that thing that my mom does. I can't do that. I can't seem to do that. Keep it together. Keep it together.
Please read.
Okay, we've lost your co-host for a second. We are having technical difficulties. We will be back to
Please
Did
read.
You Know It?
Please read.
A sailboat or sailing boat is a boat propelled partly or entirely by
know why that's a special-
entirely by sails. The generic term covers a variety of boats, larger than small vessels such as sailboards and distinctions in size are not
Strictly defined.
I didn't know where to start.
Yeah, it's a
Strictly
little confusing.
Strictly defined, and I didn't know.
It's kind of a complicated way of talking about a sailboat, isn't it?
I knew how to pronounce strictly. Strictly defined, and what constitutes a sailing ship, sailboat, or a smaller vessel such as sailboard requires a region.
It varies by region and maritime custom. Yeah.
Culture,
yes. So basically, a sailboat is a boat that's powered by what?
Wind.
Wind power. So if the wind is blowing this way, right?
Whoa.
Right?
Yes.
Then it's really easy to make the boat go that way, right?
Yes.
But what if I want to go that way?
What? It can't sail without wind and difficult to sail against the wind.
Right.
Because if you sail against the wind is pushing against the sail, and you have to have something like a propeller at the back, and it wouldn't be a sailboat.
Well, that's a good question. What would a sailboat do if he wanted to go this direction, but the wind is blowing that way? What would a sailboat do? I'll give you a hint. It's right there.
Beating upwinds is sailing as close to the wind as possible to sail towards the direction the wind is blowing.
So that means that you just turn the boat as close as you can to the direction of the wind, and it's going to kind of push you at an angle, and then you might flip over and go this way, and you kind of zigzag toward the direction of the wind. Part of that's called tacking, but it's the process of going in the direction the wind is blowing is called beating upwind.
Beating upwind.
Yes. So what's good about a sailboat?
Beating upwind. That didn't actually hurt. I didn't smack myself.
What's good about a sailboat?
It doesn't require any power.
Right.
It
doesn't use any fuel.
Yes, it doesn't use any fuel. Doesn't produce bad things in the atmosphere. A lot of carbon dioxide around you. But don't hold your breath. It's
and
fine.
what's bad about a sailboat? What's challenging about a sailboat?
That it's very hard to pilot.
Yeah, you have to sail. It's hard to sail against the wind, and it takes a lot of skill to make it go exactly where you want. What about the next one? What's the next kind of boat we're going to talk about?
Speedboats. Now, this isn't exactly a speedboat, but I bring it up because it has the qualities of a speedboat. It has an outboard motor.
Mm-hmm.
It has buoyancy, but it doesn't have the exact shape of a speedboat.
But it does have a motor, right?
Yes, an outboard.
And it doesn't even try to use the wind as power. It uses it uses this engine to make it go.
Yes, and if the wind is pushing against it, it doesn't care.
That's right. And there's different kinds of motorboats. There's an outboard motor, there's an inboard motor, there's a kind of motorboat
There's
that
an
has
in-between motor.
an engine that has a shaft. But I think we've kind of covered that. Let's move on to the next one because we're running a little shorter on time.
Oh dear.
And I don't want to miss some of the better stuff. Let's move on to the next kind of boat. This one's kind of exciting.
This
Would you
one is
mind?
actually not a boat. This is the smallest thing we have. Submarines.
Submarines. So a submarine is
A watercraft capable of independent operation underwater. It differs from a submersible.
submersible, yeah.
Just a tickle in my throat. I'm all right.
Good.
Which has more limited underwater capability. The term most commonly refers to a large, crewed,
Autonomous.
autonomous vessel.
Uh-huh.
I don't know everything. It is also sometimes used historically or colloquially.
Colloquially. Uh-huh.
Colloquially.
That's like slang.
Slang term to refer to remotely operated vehicles and robots, as well as medium-sized or smaller vessels such as the midget submarine. Ow.
Right. So a submarine, a lot of people don't realize this, a submarine is actually positively buoyant. A submarine, if you just put it in the water, will float,
Yes.
just like a regular boat. The only way to make a submarine sink is for it to take on weight, and usually it takes on weight in the form of water, because it's sitting in water, right?
Yes.
So it takes on water, and any kind of weight is called ballast. It sucks water in and it puts it into these ballast tanks, and that gives it extra weight, and that's what makes it sink. Now the good thing about that is that if you're underwater and you have to get to the surface, they always have compressed air stored on board, and they just use that compressed air to shove that water out of the tanks, and as soon as they get rid of that extra weight, what does it do?
It floats.
It automatically floats without any power. So that's kind of a like emergency fail-safe is the submarine will sink if you don't have any extra weight on board. Submarines don't, now when you're steering a submarine, do you just have like a window in the front and you look out and you just like kind of steer it like you would a car or a truck?
That's kind of the worst thing you can do. And
Yeah,
if you were gonna pilot a submarine anyway, you would do it from here, not here.
So why don't
Because
they,
there's where the torpedoes are
so if they
stored.
don't steer it by looking out the window, how do they steer a submarine?
By sonar.
And what is sonar?
It's sound waves. Dolphins use it. For example, let's bring this up here.
Sure.
And yes, everyone, it is not a spittoon. So, oh dear. Nothing. If a dolphin would produce a sound out of its head, pretend this is the dolphin, and these are the sound waves traveling out. It would not make a sound like that. Let's pretend it didn't make a sound, and then it got back to the dolphin, and the sound waves would ripple, and it would know where its food is.
Right, by picking up those bounce backs from whatever it was bouncing the sound waves off, that's how it would find things. Thank you, Carmen.
That's not correct. So submarines use it too.
Yes. So let's move on to the next one because we're running, as you know, a little short on time. So this next one is kind of boring, but it's actually really important. What's this called?
Freighters. And don't turn off the television
Don't turn
set.
off the television. Let's give some freighter love, okay?
It's because they're very interesting.
Yes, they are. Now, freighters can carry tremendous loads without using too much fuel because water is really slippery. So it's very easy to push a big load across the water without using lots and lots of fuel.
They actually carry much less. They actually carry much more than more weight than a aircraft carrier.
I suppose they can, yes.
Ooh.
But you know, it's a great way of moving large quantities of things long distances because the oceans go pretty much everywhere. And you can move it relatively cheaply considering, you know, if you look at the weight per pound that you're moving. And there's different kinds of them. There's bulk carriers, container ships, tankers. Do you know what a container ship is?
A container ship is a ship that carries containers. These,
Yeah, those big square
yes,
things.
the big square things.
Yeah, and then a bulk carrier carries just one kind of thing, like it'll be full of rice or something. So they don't necessarily use the containers for that. And then tankers carry liquids and stuff like that.
Mostly oil.
Oil, mostly, yeah. So the last thing we're going to talk about is
Very
a kind of a
sadly.
special thing called
A hovercraft.
a hovercraft. Hovercraft are cool. Why are they called hovercraft?
Because they hover.
On what?
A cushion.
A cushion of felt? A cushion of jello? A cushion of mucus?
Plastic.
Air.
Plastic. Air. Sorry.
Air.
Air concealed in plastic.
What's
forgot, Dad. I forgot. My co-host is very smart too.
Yeah, blah, blah. So the hovercraft floats on a cushion of air.
He was trying to say that he really likes me saying that he's dashing.
Dashing is better than pretty much anything. So can I tell you I actually rode on a hovercraft one time.
Across the English Channel.
Across the English Channel, and you know what it was like?
Did you see Gertrude Ederle's cap?
I did not see Gertrude Ederle's swimming the channel at the time.
No, her cap. If it was still floating in the water. If you did, then please.
I'll get back to you on that. I don't remember it, but I'll think really hard about that. But you know what it was like riding in a hovercraft?
It was like a big bus that needed a lot of work.
No, it was like being inside of a vacuum cleaner. It was incredibly loud and buzzy and vibrating and not glamorous or luxurious. But
you would like to go on an ocean liner, as my friend says.
Yes, but you don't need a dock.
He's not my friend. He's actually my dad.
Yeah, but you don't need a dock for a hovercraft. It can just go right up onto the beach, which is kind of handy because it'll hover on land is just like the water as long as it's flat. So we've come to the wrap-up portion of our show.
Wrap up.
Carter, what's your final thought on the subject of ships? Just give me your last impressions of ships and boats. Good, bad? Should we get rid of them? Can we keep them around?
Keep them around.
Really? All right. Okay. So what we've decided is that in the future we think ships should continue to be a part of our lives, plying their trade across the oceans and waterways of the world. Am I getting a little ridiculous here? Yeah,
teensy,
I am.
But not a lot.
What do you think our next show is going to be about?
I think our next show, it might be about cars, might be about space travel in the future, might be about animals, and might also be about well, I don't know.
All right. Well, that's it for today's show. Thanks for watching. I hope it wasn't too much trouble. And for myself and my fabulous co-host Carter.
Yeah.
You want to wrap us out? Say goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone, and have a good time at home, whichever home you're in.